マーティン・スコセッシ監督です。どうぞよろしくお願いいたします。
Arigato, thank you. Arigato. Well, I'm very. It's like a dream that's come true to be here, to be actually thanking you for receiving the film, the completed film of Silence. It's a film that I've wanted to make for so many years, and somehow here I am in Tokyo, and it's finished, and I could present it. Well, it's been a long process, mainly because when I first read the book here in Japan, I felt I wanted to make the film, but I didn't know how. I didn't know if I understood how to interpret it. This had a lot to do with my own religious inclinations and questions, and also the Japanese culture. But it was a long learning process of trial and error, and I think more of a process of learning possibly about living life and just becoming older over a period of 25 years. And I must say that it's not a film that I feel is finished. It's a film I'm still living with and by in my life. I had a great admiration for their courage and their conviction. And as one of the Asian Jesuits pointed out in Rome, he said that the horrors of the tortures and the killings on the part of the authorities, in effect, was leveled against the violence of the West, which was manifested by their intrusion with the truth, quote unquote, the universal truth from the West, which means your truth is nothing. Your culture is nothing. We have the truth. And he says to the Asian, this was a form of violence. And the only thing we could do with that was to break down the arrogance. And it was to get to the heads of the group rather than continue to take it out on the poor Christians. And in breaking down the arrogance of Rodriguez through his apostasy, Rodriguez then realizes the complete wiping away of the false ideas he had of Christianity, and he empties himself. He's selfless. He becomes a servant. He becomes a true Christian. And in effect, I think that's what the Japanese Christians were attracted to, which was the compassion, the idea that I may be, but the idea of every human being having a worth and a value. And something that Endo wrote in Life of Jesus in his introduction, and this is from Endo. He said the Japanese are afraid of four things. He says fire, earthquakes, lightning, and fathers. He said, therefore, the authoritative way from the West for Christianity really wasn't the way to take hold of Christianity in Japan, Japanese culture. It was more the mercy and compassion and nurturing of the feminine side of Christianity. And I think somehow, maybe that's what the hidden Christian held on to, and still till today is something that's very beautiful and that can be benefit to all of us. Oh yes, I'm sure it would have, yes. I think by the time I made The Gangs of New York, around 2003 is when it really began to change. And I began to think I could attempt a structured script of silence. Up to that time, in order to keep the rights, I was stalling, basically. I was saying, I have the script, we'll do it, don't worry. Right? I didn't have it. And we got in all kinds of legal issues. I was being sued by the owners of the property and the Italians. And all kinds of problems. But we kept going. I kept holding on to it. And finally, I think around 2003 is when, and that was a change in my life too. I was married again. We had a little girl. As an older father, it's a different situation than when you're a father at a younger age. So things began to change, and suddenly it opened up. No, I think that the making of Last Temptation of Christ was a serious attempt at exploring concepts of Christian religion. And it was received badly, but the night I showed it to a group of religious, an audience of religious groups, there was one Episcopal Archbishop who spoke to us afterwards, Paul Moore, and he liked it, or he liked the idea of the discussion in it. And he said, I have a book for you, and it's called Silence, and I'm going to give it to you. He said, because that is about faith. He said, this Last Temptation had other aspects. And after making Last Temptation and getting embroiled in the controversy, I had lost sight of where I wanted to go with my religion. I felt something was not right. It wasn't right. And when I read this, that's where I felt that I could go further. I had to go deeper, and I had to find it in me the way Endo was able to find it. And so that's why I stuck with it, because everything else really is not as important that way in life. What I mean is that there are people that are important to you, but the other work and the other films were not as important as me trying to find, not answers, at least being immersed in the question of our existence. I mean, this story really was not about the dogma in any way. It's really more about actually the struggle of faith and doubt. And this is very important. And it's inclusive that way. It's not an authoritative clergy person saying to you, you doubt, you're no longer valid. No, we doubt everything in our lives. We don't even know why we're here. So that's what attracted me, and that's what kept me going. I hope it resonates with those of us who feel weakness in us and doubt. I hope it resonates with an acceptance and not rejection. Very much the way Kichijiro says, where's the place for a weak man in a world like today? Well, we're back there. And in that acceptance, we should explore that. And what I mean by that is not reject the weak. That is, include the weak, embrace the weak. The weak may become stronger or it may never become stronger. But the value, to go for the value of what it is to be a human being, this is what I hope could begin a discussion, or at least make one aware that not everyone has to have a big, bat hitting people. And not everyone has to be the strong arm, and that's not necessarily the way. to sustain civilization through violence. It's to help eliminate, as much as possible, the outcast or the dispossessed. To know them as people and as human beings. It begins in the individual level, each person. One thing I always loved about the new Gospels, the New Testament, was Jesus as a man was always seen with the worst people. These tax collectors, prostitutes, real bums. He wasn't with the powerful. And it was an acceptance of the wretch, that the wretch could become something special and holy and good. And it's a dangerous situation for our young, because if they don't know anything beyond that the strong inherit the earth, it would be a disaster. They have no form, they have no form of a context, because they're born now or only 5 years ago. So if they just know that the strong are the ones that take over the world, well, that's not a good thing. In many societies in the West, it's it's something which is not taken seriously, I find, and sometimes held up for ridicule, and it might be that those impulses which created the old religion, or the old religions from the West, are undergoing an evolution. Well, we don't know if they'll get there for the new generations unless we encounter that spiritual side of ourselves.
私やっぱり映画を見て感じたのは、やっぱり自分の先祖だと思うと、涙も出てきます。もう感情をあらわにできるような映画じゃないかと、そういうふうに思っておりまして、ぜひ皆さんに見ていただきたいと思います。
続きまして、ちょっと中央に近づいてもらって、はい、チャーミングですね。はい、では真ん中のオフィシャルカメラからいきます。
To the center,
さ
please.
っきと同じ流れでいきます。はい、ちょっと長めでいきますね。まだセンターです。すいません。まだセンターです。